there's a tremendous amount of information and lots of great resources there. So I hope that each of you take advantage of all the resources he's got there. We want to encourage questions and some sort of interaction. So if he says something that that's of interest, or you want to know more, please put it in the chat, and then I'll make sure that he gets the question. Okay. So without further ado, Mark.
Hey, thank you, David, and welcome to everybody on a supposedly rainy Wednesday night. I don't know if that's really going to happen. It seems like they shouldn't get paid if they don't get the weather report right, I guess. But so what I want to do is, let's see if I can get this thing to forward here. Oh, I get it. So quick, really, I've got about 31 slides. I'm going to go through. A lot of them are images, but I'm going to talk to the image, and but some of them are a little bit more reading. I don't want to read word for word, but I have been in self-employed since '99, established my own company, and been a recruiter and a career transition coach.
Please, sir.
Hello?
I guess we have to mute everybody.
Yeah.
Hush. Stop.
I think she's talking to her dog. Okay, so here we go. I wrote a best-selling book called Keys to the C-Suite over my right shoulder. And if you are interested in that book, there's a way to get it for free if you're a Prime member, and you can get it on Kindle. But I am very proud of it. I put it out there in 2018, and it's actually everything that you're getting tonight is excerpt from the book, and then some. I've got some statistics in here that will help you develop your targets based on if you're in job search or if you're a consultant. It'll be great to be able to develop your targets, and we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. I am a certified personnel consultant, which was awarded through NAPS back in '98, and it's essentially a level of recruiter where we have to take an exam that is all about code of ethics. It's all about employment law, EEOC, and it pretty much binds us to making sure that we follow the rule of law when it comes to hiring practices. And I passed that exam at the University of Cincinnati back in '98. Certified partner with Predictive Index. I think it's one of the leading talent selection and leadership development assessments on the market today. If you've heard of it before, you know what I'm talking about. It's been around since 1955. I also host and facilitate my own networking event called CareerNet, formerly called ExecuNet, and I rebranded during the year of COVID last year, and it's now called the CareerNet Executive Leadership Network. And we hold meetings once a month on the third Thursday. So next Thursday is our next meeting, and there's information if you wish to attend. We're going to be talking about how to master the art of professional networking. And we have a guest speaker by the name of Chris Thorne, who is he owns his own business, and he helps with military personnel who are retiring, coming out of the military, and he's also a former HR executive. I also have been blogging, and this is a link on my website, as David alluded to. I've been blogging since 2006, so I think it's about 175 blogs in total. I've been repurposing some of them based on the current economic conditions. So with that, I love what I do. I'm passionate about helping people understand what it takes to manage their career, and certainly happy to help in any way that I can. If people are interested in connecting with me offline, I'm real easy to find on LinkedIn. So what is your career path trajectory? We're going to talk about highlighting these 5 areas today. Again, this is not everything that is in the book, but it's quite a bit of it is covered. But I want to help you learn how to create a roadmap, how to identify companies, industries, what's coming down the pike. Technology rules the universe, and there's a lot of emerging technology. We'll talk about where to find out where those companies are and what are the emerging technologies. Those of you that are self-employed, or you maybe are thinking of becoming an entrepreneur and have your own business, there's a whole new system of career alternatives that are very popular today. I call that Plan B is the new Plan A. And we're going to talk about consulting, interim, and fractional management, which is a kind of under the umbrella of the entrepreneur track. And then we'll talk, finally, we'll cover what I believe are essential job search strategies. Again, it's not everything, but we'll try to get you as up and running as possible for those of you that want to learn how to manage your career, or you're in transition, or you're planning to make a job change. So with that, there are a lot of things that are going on. I've done a lot of my research at the beginning of the year, and I've recently updated some of the numbers that you're going to see on the slides. But I wanted to talk about the Gartner hype cycle. And now if you notice on the screen, it says 2015. This is 6 years old. And if you look down around the lower left where it says smart dust, okay? Smart dust, if anybody knows what that is, raise your hand. If you can't raise your hand, just speak up. If you're on a call where you don't have your video on, I'll cut to the chase. Smart dust are microscopic drones, and they measure air temperature. They measure barometric pressure, maybe even radiation pollution, and they fly around in the air. Now, what that meant, the little orange dot next to smart dust meant that it's more than 10 years out before it becomes critical mass. And anything on the right side of the bell curve is known as the trough of disillusionment. It's where everything has become past critical mass. Like probably way the heck over here about 10 years ago, you heard of smartphones. Everybody was wondering what smartphones were. And now everybody has one for the most part. But these are areas where you can begin looking and seeing what's coming down the pike. What are some of these industries, like what IoT, which is Internet of Things platforms. How many companies are involved in IoT today? How many companies are in 3D printing? Okay, this is 5 years ago. Now listen to this. We're going to flash forward to 2020. I just downloaded this today. Some of it can be a little difficult to read, but if you kind of get close to your screen, you'll see almost everything that was 5 years ago is gone, maybe 10. I would use this if I were in transition or I was going to be consulting. I would want to know what's coming, what's 2 to 5 years out. And I would want to go and do Google every single one of these and find out who the companies are that are in this industry and find out what kind of needs they have, from an organizational development, from hiring to consulting, or you name it. They all need help if they're growing. And what is their position in their industry? How big are they? Where are they going? And how fast have they been growing? You can research this stuff. And this is how you can understand, not only from a job search point of view, but from a consulting point of view, as to where you can go and apply your expertise and wisdom. And this is a good way for you to begin starting. Any questions on this, let me know. But this has been around for many, many years. Gartner is one of the world's leading market research companies, and they sell this information to companies that subscribe. I cannot tell you how much a subscription would cost, but it's in the tens of thousands. And then they will literally research what's going on in your industry as a company and be able to tell you what's coming or what's new and where everything is going. And as far as emerging technologies, they would also be able to do healthcare manufacturing, medical products, construction. They examine every industry. But I only bring up emerging technologies is because it's some of the most interesting most of the time when you're dealing with electronics so much like we are today. You can get an idea as to the kinds of things that are coming up that are 5 to 10 years out. And always a lot of discussion happens if you're working with a company and you want to know where your competitors are and what kind of products or services are coming that are going to be related to what you're currently doing as a company. Any questions on this? You can research this stuff on Google. It was easy to find. Just type in the title, Gartner Hype Cycle for Emerging Technologies, and I just put the year 2020. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the generations that are in the workforce today. As far as I am concerned, personally, I am a baby boomer. I was born in 55, so that makes me 65. And right now, the senior baby boomers, the gray hairs, the silver gray hairs, they're starting to think about retiring, if not already. And it's happening as we speak. They're creating a lot of open positions in companies, and there are people moving up the ranks. Obviously, the traditionalists born before 45 and earlier, and they are retired or they are in semi-retirement, but not really working in the workforce as we speak. But you've got 5 generations, and I'm combining Gen X and Gen Y, and they represent about 50 million, almost 50 million people in the workforce. The millennials represent 84 million, born between 77 and 95, and they need training, folks. The next group is the lowest right now, the newest generation to the workforce, Generation Z, which is the largest generation in the country in our demographic, according to the census. And these are people that are very driven. They have an extreme desire to be successful. There's a lot of thought behind this as to why they might be so ingenuine, I would say assertive or aggressive. And I think it's because they have a direct influence from the baby boomer grandparents and the grandchildren. Okay, so you've got Gen X and Gen Y and millennials that have children that are in the Generation Z, and the baby boomer grandparents and their grandchildren usually have a very tight relationship. So I think that a lot of what the baby boomers drive and ambition may have been wearing off on the Generation Z grandchildren. So just a thought. I've heard this mentioned several times from different people who are experts in this. But if you keep in mind that Gen X and Gen Y, they're the next C-suite, they're the ones that are going to be running companies if they're not already, and they're being groomed. But the areas that need real emphasis as far as training and development, I believe, are the millennials. And I know they're not an easy group. Sometimes they've got a little bit of a bad rap for not being as assertive and aggressive with their career, but they definitely love training, and they're part of the digital babies that were born. Generation Z and millennials are natural at dealing with digital products, phones, you name it, computers. They're cutting edge, and they always want to be part of that. So just throwing this stuff out so you can get an idea as to who potentially are potential customers and or who will be running companies. Okay, any questions, let me know. So what does this mean for the labor market? Well, there's companies that are going to be hiring and there's companies that are going to be outsourcing. But if they're hiring, they're going to have to hire smart or they're going to have to manage tough. And what I mean by that is the practices of hiring people today have been increased to a high level of scrutiny. They're using more assessments. They're doing longer interviews. They're being more selective. If they don't find the right person, they typically promote from within. So a lot of companies are going to play the field. They're going to look at a large pool of candidates for each position, and then they're going to narrow down. And if they don't have the perfect candidate, like I mentioned, they typically, many times, they will promote from within, which not always a happy time for someone who was in the running for that typical job. But that's where it comes for the managers, is they want to hire smart because they don't want to have to manage somebody who's going to be pretty tough to keep motivated and accountable. So what does that mean for people in talent development, training and development as far as leadership goes? There's a big surge of requirements that this is a huge amount of need right now at companies to hire the best or outsource that work, and they need to be trained. People are hired, and the universities and the companies are also kind of the best educators in the world. Okay, companies want to educate you and orientate you on their product or service. They're going to need people to help train that and develop the people, especially, as I mentioned, the millennials, which represent about 84 million people in the workforce today. So what is your career path? I've had this quote for a while, but essentially, you know, we are in a very much of a entrepreneurial type of mode. Many people have started a business. Back in 19 was a terrific year. 2020 was a tough year for small business. We know that. But in light of all that, you really do need to be thinking about your career as a series of projects and assignments. And it goes every 2.3 years on average. 2 to 3 years, you will change jobs, or your company will reassign, or they'll be acquired, or they'll merge, and it'll cause problems with the employees, and the musical chairs starts, and things get rearranged based on mergers and acquisitions. So you need to be very vigilant as to what you're doing with your career and staying very much in touch with what the latest trends are and where companies are going and who's hiring and who are the top 25, who are in each category, depending on what your area of expertise and what industry and function you're most interested in. Okay. So what is Plan B? It's about 6 different things that you can consider if you are interested in the entrepreneurial track. So you've got consulting. If this is of interest, I highly recommend the book $1 Million Consulting by Alan Weiss. It's a bestseller on Amazon. He covers A to Z on how to sound, how to speak, how to talk, how to listen, how to act like a consultant. And if this is something that you're interested in doing or you're already doing, this is a great book. Fractional management is really cool. It's relatively new, maybe 5 to 10 years old. But essentially you become a CXO. X is, it could be marketing, it could be executive, it could be operations, could be CFO, finance, chief finance officer, and you essentially are doing a company each day of the week. Different company. On Monday, you work your 10 to 8 hours or 10 to 12 hours, and then you go to Tuesday, you're working with another company, and you actually fill your dance card each day of the week is a different company. So they're getting a fraction of you, okay, at a good price, instead of having to pay you a full annual salary because they only have limited amounts of work. Very, very popular option today for companies, plus it's a tax write-off. Franchise ownership, a little bit different. You know, it's not just Panera Bread and you know, hair cutting places. There's a lot of service type of companies that are out there. FranNet is a wonderful company that can help you explore that. By the way, I forgot to mention gigx.com is a great company if you wanted to research them. They focus on a directory for fractional managers. And then franchising, also I recommend frannet.com. There's a wonderful company up in Orange County called Sirius Executives, and they are a interim management solutions provider. So what they do is they'll get an assignment from a company for 6 to 12 months or longer, and they'll go and find somebody, and they'll hire, Sirius hires that person, and then they bill them out by the day or by the hour or by the month as an addend, kind of like a contract hire, but it's managed through Sirius. This is called interim management, and it's very, very popular. Even the largest recruiting firms in the world, like Korn Ferry, have their own interim management group that places these individuals on contract hire situations with their clients. You can, if you've got, go ahead, question?
Oh, I have a question for you. It's not related to Plan B, but before we get too much farther, because it's, you know, the question is, what would you say is the reason for the shift in staying in a career for 20 years versus 2 to 3 years that you are seeing now?
Well, the cradle, that's a good question. Is that David?
Yes.
Yeah. So the question is why are jobs shorter? Why am I suggesting that you have to look at your career as a series of projects and assignments? And I believe that is because the times are changing so rapidly, and these cradle to grave jobs really don't exist anymore. I know I've coached several people who've been with the same company for 20 years, and they've cocooned in that what I call a security blanket job for many, many years. And they've actually, it's been a disservice to them because time has literally passed them by with regards to being able to make a change, and their salary is compressed because they're not getting a bump in their salary when they go to another company. They've stayed with the same company and they've only got that cost of living or that merit increase. So, but companies are moving people around a lot, and it's just a very much of a dinosaur type of situation to have a job for 10, 15, 20 years. If you know what I mean, people who are changing jobs every probably 3, I would say 2.5 to 3 years, maybe up to 5. And if they're not promoted or they're not taken care of or being recognized, they will be a flight risk, and that's where retention becomes a problem. So there's all kinds of things that are causing that, David, but it's just basically because products and services are updated overnight. Microsoft, it purchases a company and puts 3 others out of business because they take that product and they just run with it. Now they own LinkedIn. You'll never see another company compete with LinkedIn because Microsoft owns it, and they'll always just keep making it better and better. So,
okay. So it sounds like it's a combination of you know, the nature of jobs themselves has changed, and also the way business runs things has changed. That there's you know, it used to be you would learn a job and it would be, your job wouldn't change very much for most of that 20 years. And it sounds like now the jobs change pretty regularly for the most part. And so the companies are sort of encouraging you, and at the same time you're being sort of encouraged to look around. Would that be fair?
I don't know that you're being encouraged by the company to look around unless they don't want you to be there, but I'm just saying that the answer is multiple types of situations where the longevity of a long-term career in one company is really non-existent anymore, just because things are changing so rapidly and people get bored, and it's just not the same as it used to be. If you know anyone that's been in a company for 20 plus years, if they've lost their job because the company, whatever, for many reasons, they have to lay people off and they have to reduce the amount of people, those people are taken care of because they've got that longevity. They get a good severance and maybe even some coaching and outplacement, but they're at a disadvantage because they haven't had to look for a job in a long, long time. And they probably should have kept their eye on understanding what's going on out there. Many of them don't even have an updated LinkedIn profile. So with regards to the reasons, exact reasons, it's impossible to predict as to why companies have employees that last forever. They rise up to the ranks of leadership and they stay and then they retire. But that is a very rare thing that happens. That's all I can say. So,
Thanks.
sure. Purchasing a company, if you've got the capital, and then starting a company, you can bootstrap an idea and get funding if you've got a great idea. Those are called startups, of course. Pretty risky, not always too reliable, but you've got to have a lot of tenacity and you've got to be good at a lot of different, wearing a lot of different hats in order to make a company become successful if it's an idea, all the way through scaling it into a successful, profitable company. So consulting, interim, and fractional management, these are options today as part of Plan B. What will it take? The pros and cons. You're going to have to be good at a lot of different things. If you're not good at sales, you're going to have to hire salespeople to go out and pitch your idea. If you're going to be a consultant and you don't know how to sell or relate or develop business, it's going to be very difficult. Interim manager, if you are good at finance or operations or information technology, human resources, training and development, you would be hired for your particular function and discipline. If you're a fractional manager, you're same situation. If you're a marketing CMO type individual where you go in and you help companies that don't have a marketing director and you become a virtual marketing director for them on a fractional basis, which means you're working there 1 or 2 days a week at the most. But if you're going to be consulting or owning your own business, you need to be pretty good at a lot of the things that are listed on the right side of your screen. If you're not, then you're going to have to outsource that and maybe even develop a 1099 relationship with another person who can help you with that as you're trying to grow your business. But the true entrepreneur has made a lot of money to pay for all of his or her mistakes. You know, that's the risk that you take when you try to start your own business. And you got to be committed to it and try not to look back. And if you have that urge to be, hey, maybe I made a mistake, I've got to go have to get a full-time job because I'm not making it as a consultant, then you've got to make those pivots pretty quickly so you don't waste too much time unless you are really good at sticking it out and you're determined. But, you know, consulting, I would be, it's the least expensive way to get yourself self-employed. Working as an interim manager, you're obviously employed through a 1099 relationship with a company that will place you. It's kind of like, that's called staff augmentation. And they literally help the company by placing you into that company as a contract employee. And then, of course, the fractional, which is a lot more freedom that you get when you are either a fractional or a consultant with a company. Any other questions on that? Just chime in. So just a real quick little update. Over the last 30 years, this may become I believe it's one of the bigger segments of all of them. Is interim management is now over $3 billion, maybe even a little more. This slide is about a year and a half old, but it's been growing on average 20 to 40% annually. And it is very, very popular for companies. And I will tell you this, in the United Kingdom, 60% of all the executives in the workforce are interim managers. It's very, very popular in Europe, very popular. They're all on temporary assignments that can last months to years. And they literally are like a talent for hire, and it's based on their expertise and their wisdom for what they do. Okay, it's just starting to get a little more foothold in the United States, but it's very, very popular over in the UK. Okay, so let's just talk real quick salary. Now, this may be a lot less than what everyone's looking at in their own world, but on a national average, you can see this is as of last month. The national average is just over 74,000, and that's per individual, of course. That skews higher in the depending on the percentile that you're in, and it's just kind of a synopsis of what that wage, weekly pay, monthly pay breaks out. How do you earn that if you're in a job, and where are you located based on cost of living? All comes into play. I've been saying that if you want to live in San Diego, you need to be making approximately 3 times your age to be able to make ends meet and have a house, because they're always expensive in San Diego, Southern Cal, Northern Cal, the bigger cities. You know, you're looking at, $500,000 to $1 million for a nice house, a decent house. Look at Silicon Valley. You get a 1,200 square foot house for $1 million, $1.2 million, and it's right down the street from either Apple or near Cupertino in the Silicon Valley and Facebook. They just raised the bar in that part of the country where you need to be making a lot of money in order to live there. So again, it's all based on cost of living. 3 times your age, maybe up to 4 times your age in order to maintain your cost of living, and it all depends on your zip code. Okay. So employee retention, I talked a little bit about this earlier. There are some just astounding statistics that right now 3 million Americans quit their job each month. Why is that? Well, they're upgrading their career. They're not happy. They're not satisfied. They're not being rewarded. They've been passed over. They're underutilized. Okay. They're not making an impact like they think they should, or they're not getting that attention for that next promotion. 31% quit their job within the first 6 months of starting. And this is because they haven't examined all the facts before they accept a job. There are a lot of red flags to take the first thing that comes along. Usually 50% of the time, this is a statistic, 50% of the time people accept a job right away. The first thing that comes along is a mistake, because within 6 months, they're probably wondering why they took this job. It's a dead end, it's boring. They didn't examine everything carefully. They ignored the red flags as far as where the company's going, stability, or maybe they really didn't like their boss when they first interviewed, but they took the job anyway. So be careful on if you are interviewing.
So what are some of those red flags?
I would say that the manager is going to be very difficult to work with. If you don't understand how you're going to be interacting with that team, or who the person is you're reporting to. Again, the number one reason people leave companies is because of personality conflict, usually with the hiring authority or the boss. So there's a million answers to why people leave companies, but making a mistake is what I wanted to highlight. Is don't jump at the first thing that comes along. The goal is develop 2 or 3 in your pipeline so you have a choice. Okay, and we'll get into some of these a little bit, but let me look at this. 52 million employees looking for a better job right now in this country. Why? You name it. You've been there, you've done that, you've had good jobs. Why was that job a good job? Usually it's because you really liked the people. It was challenging. There was good work-life balance, and it probably paid you what you were worth. But not all those things line up in a perfect job every time. So people are always looking, and they're not always satisfied. So good, smart people will be confidentially looking, always keeping their network alive. We'll get into talking about networking in a minute or two. And I'm just saying that managing your career is very, very important. You do not want to be one of the people that companies are going to have a retention problem with. And that's a big, big problem, because every time someone leaves a company, all right, because they have determined they're leaving on their own free will, is because they weren't loved or taken care of, it can cost a company up to 200% of their annual salary. It's extremely expensive to lose good talent. And if you don't take care of it, if you're in management and you're not recognizing people for their good deeds and their positive performance in the job, be careful, especially millennials. You know, they'll walk as quick as you can blink. If they're not trained, if they're not they want training. They want to be progressive in the organization. And unfortunately, training and development is one of the first areas that they cut costs when a company starts to have troubled times or revenue issues. They start cutting costs, and they start eliminating payroll, and the first things they do are cost centers. Usually the people that are developing revenue generators are the last to go, if they're so important, because sales is what drives the company, right? But marketing and HR, sometimes, you know, the engineering department, I don't know, information technology, those people sometimes can be expendable if the revenue can't keep the payroll happy. So real important to be thinking about these things throughout your whole career until you retire. So where is and how do you find the best jobs? Well, I can tell you right now, 55% of the time, you're going to get your best job through an internal referral. Somebody who already works at the company, who you know, who likes you, and they help you or mentor or sponsor you in the door. This is the #1 way for companies to hire the best people. I know that big companies like Salesforce and Google and Microsoft and locally Qualcomm and Viasat, they require their employees, they put the word out internally in the ranks of all their employees that they have openings that they're trying to fill, and people are nominating themselves for promotion, or they will suggest somebody they know that's outside the company. And usually it's a good bet for a company to hire somebody who's been introduced by an internal employee. Think about it. And it works both ways. It works great for you as an employee that gets a job through an existing employee, because you want to make sure they look good, and you're going to go in and do a great job, and they already know who you are and what your characteristics and what you stand for. Honesty, integrity, ethics, right? You're a known entity. Now the others, they all fall by the wayside. Online postings, good luck. You and 300 or 400 other people are looking at the same job posting. And then you've got the online applications where you just send in an application online. Who sees it? Does it even get to the hiring authority? Or are you put in a different folder, a file folder with a bunch of hundreds of other people and resumes? And then of course, search firms. Not always the most reliable, but if you do get presented by a search firm, your chances are usually 4 or 5 to 1 because you're a small pool of candidates that have been screened and sourced and referenced and maybe even assessed through the search firm to make sure that they're presenting the exact right fit to what the company has assigned them to find. Okay, any questions on this, let me know. None of this is rocket science, but if anything, I'm just reinforcing the facts that as to what it takes to help manage your career and make sure that the trajectory is solid, that you're not flatlining. You want to always be progressing in your career from one job to the next. So what is your story? How do you tell your story? Networking is absolutely the lifeblood of a career. Defining your DNA. What is your drive? What motivates you? What gets you out of bed in the morning? You know, what area do you focus in? And why? Why do you love doing what you do? If you don't love doing what you do, well, you've got to find out what it is that does light you up. Okay, but your area of focus has to be your first defense. That's what you hang your hat on at the end of the day. And this is illustrated in your accomplishments throughout your resume and your LinkedIn profile, and why you are unique and why a company would want you to provide a service for them and be paid well for it. Okay. What is your plan? This is a great acronym. Remember this. What is your passion? Why do you do what you do? Why are you in your specific function or discipline? And I coached a guy that was in the ophthalmic industry, and I asked him, how did you get into this business? And he says both his parents had impaired vision. His mother had real bad cataracts, and his father had these incredibly large glasses that he had to use to read both online and from distance and near, reading a book. And it was always apparent to him that this was a struggle, and it made his mission to get into that industry and make a difference for people. And I said, don't ever not say that in an interview or bring it up in conversation, because if you're passionate about it, people need to hear that. And it's a great story to tell. And people will say, my gosh, that's wonderful. Wish they could probably feel the same way about their career and why they do what they do. So lessons, what are the lessons you've learned? This is ongoing. We wouldn't be anywhere if we didn't know the mistakes we've made. And one of the biggest lessons you've made, or lessons you've learned, that you will never repeat again. But boy, it's tip of mind, and this prevents you from going backwards, but progressing. Another great way for you to have a strong trajectory is look back of all the lessons and all the great things that you've been taught and developed over time. So if you don't know your top 8 accomplishments, you're falling behind. They're illustrated as bullets on your resume, and they're highlighted possibly in your LinkedIn profile. You need to be able to talk about how you made a difference, or what your greatest deliverables were in time based on where you were in your career, and which ones you're most proud of. These are things that any great company that's interviewing lots of candidates, if you don't know what you're proud of and the big accomplishments and achievements you've made, and be able to talk like they happened yesterday during an interview or a phone screen or a Zoom meeting online, you're going to fall behind, and someone else is going to get the nod or the handshake and come on in and work for us. And then what are your needs? You need to be able to define what your ideal role is. Okay. And typically defining what you are looking for comes first. But in this case, the acronym of plan, the needs come last just because of the way the word is spelled. But your ideal role in an organization is based on what you love doing. That goes back to your why. And understanding your wants and your needs, that's going to make you happy. And of course, there's people, challenge, balance, and worth. You've got to love the people. That's one of your big needs. They got to like you. You got to be able to learn from them. They have to be able to learn from you. And it's a good working relationship. And then you've got challenge. If it's not challenging, it's boring. If you don't have a good reason to jump out of bed in the morning, you got a problem. And by the way, money is not a motivator. Money is a stimulator. Okay, they have to stimulate you to give you the right offer, the right package for you to accept a job to work for their company. Okay, you don't get out of bed because you got extra zeros in your checking account balance in money. You get out of bed because you love your job and you're excited to go and make a difference at work. That's called
Mark,
passion. Yes.
I got a question for you.
Go for
Some people have a hard time, you've got your head down and you're just sort of focused on doing what you do. And then when it comes to what's your ideal role, are there some special techniques or anything that help people to sort of step back and answer that kind of question?
Well, I like the predictive index. It's a great way to determine your needs, drives, and behaviors. But if you go back to a couple slides, what's your DNA? You got to take a look in the mirror. What drives you? What makes you happy? What are the biggest wins in your career, and how did it make you feel? And do you want to do that again and be rewarded for that? You need to kind of look at the landscape. What kinds of companies are you excited about? What products and services? Then you go back to the Gartner hype cycle. You can again start to develop your own targets as to, like the gentleman that I coached who is in the ophthalmology industry. Okay. He's in it for his wonderful reason that his relatives, his parents, were stricken with vision impairment. He knew what his role was, but you got to look inside. You got to be real introspective and really understand, are you, first of all, going to be successful at it? Number one, how many specific jobs are available that you could fill within each company, or how many companies need a consultant that you can go in and be the expert to help them troubleshoot, fix a problem, improve, leverage, grow. There's a lot of reasons why you need to be able to determine what your ideal role is. And sometimes talking to people, asking them what they do, informational interviews is a wonderful tool. You study people and ask if they would spend 20, 30 minutes and talk to you about their job and how they got into it and what would they do differently. What advice would they give you if you were to explore working in the same company, doing the same thing that they do? So you're studying the successful people so you can develop an idea as to what would make you happy in the right role, in the right industry, and the right company. Again, you're a detective in a murder mystery here, and you're looking for all the clues that's going to line up and help you determine what makes the most sense and be the most rewarding. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so networking, holy moly. I said it's the lifeblood of a career. It's your net worth, your network, everybody you know, all the people you like and trust, respect, and love like a brother or sister. They all need to know who you are. You probably have your top 5, top 10, maybe more people that are part of your inner circle of influence. They all need to know that. I always say create your own career board of advisors and let them be your voice. Let them be your ears. Talk to them, invest in them. In other words, make it a two-way street. I'm a strong believer in the reciprocal type of relationship where you are there for them as much as they're available for you. But you've got to nurture your network, and these people, they can help, because on average, each person knows about 241 people. I don't know where that number came, but it was done by Lee Hecht Harrison as a global outplacement firm. And they said they've done averages around the globe, and on average, 241 people are in everyone's network. That's an average number. Now, I have 4,000 LinkedIn contacts, and I know about 80% of them. Plus, I don't know if everybody, where you get your contacts, they're right here in your cell phone. Your top 250 or whatever number that is, they're in the cell phone as your contacts because they're important people. They wouldn't be there if they weren't. Another place to look is your Outlook. Go through all your email contacts in your Outlook in your computer, in your Microsoft Office, if that's what you're using, and look at all and narrow it down and make a short list of the most successful, the most powerful, the most connected, right? People that you know. And if you're in transition, or you're planning to make a change, or you're trying to develop a consulting practice, you need to invest your time in educating them on what it is you're looking for. What is your goal? What are your issues? What's your problem? What are you struggling with? They are not strangers to you. These are not just mere acquaintances. These are people you've worked with, alumni, friends, neighbors, relatives, uncles, aunts, even nieces and nephews. Don't underestimate young workers, okay? Especially some of the Generation Z. They're very successfully driven people, and they want to help. They care about everybody. They know that's how they've realized this, that is, in order to get ahead, you've got to nurture your network, okay? So share referrals, be memorable, be a giver, and never just be a taker. Yes, you're going to receive help. You're going to ask somebody, hey, I'm really struggling. Can you point me in the right direction? And oh, by the way, how can I help you? You can't just have a one-way street, okay? These are important things to remember. This is not rocket science, folks, but you've got to practice these beliefs. Start with the belief and then practice it. So the key formula for networking success, I codified it down at the bottom, but networking success is based on your human capital. That's what you know, times your social capital. That's who knows you, not just who you know, but who knows you, times your reputation. And that's who trusts you and what they say about you. You want to be talked up behind your back in a positive way. People, I do this for a living. I'm talking to John and I say, John, do you know Bob Thomas? No, I go, he says, no, I don't. I said, I'm going to introduce you to Bob. I think he'd be a great guy for you to meet and connect with and share what's going on in both of your worlds. And I'm thinking it's kind of a net weaving type of thing that I'm trying to do to get people talking, especially if they're struggling. You can do this. You help people do this. And in return, when you're a giver, it's going to come back. Okay? Or you'll be known as a giver. And that's what you want. Be memorable, not forgettable. You want to have a really good introduction to yourself, who you are, your highest and best use. What's your plan? What are your targets? Here are the things that I'm most interested in, and I'd love to get your opinion. You're always asking for an opinion or advice, because when you do that, it's a compliment, right? So remember, in the old days, the old paradigm was it's not what you know, it's who you know. The new paradigm is it's not who you know, it's who knows you and what they're saying about you. Remember that. And you're creating advocates. Everyone you meet, treat them with respect, treat them as much as you offer your help and assistance and advice Is there anything I can do to help you? Don't make it about yourself first. Ask them what you can do for them, and then listen well, talk last, and say thank you. It's a system. You just get into the routine, and boy, it will work for you as long as you stay true and you really be genuine and authentic. Okay. So how do you find a new job or grow your business, your consulting practice? Well, if you're afraid of networking, you're afraid of introducing yourself, and you are an introvert, you really need to push yourself. You need to break out. You need to get comfortable talking about yourself when that time comes. But you can be really good at asking questions to get other people talking first. Okay, so introverts, push yourself. And here's a warning for extroverts. Control yourself. You can take over a conversation pretty good if you've got a AAA personality. I need to control myself. I can go jump right in and, yakking it up, but that doesn't help anyone, right? No one wants to just hear a one-way street conversation. You need to have a good 50-50 flow with people. So you can't be afraid of networking. And think about, this is kind of a hedgehog thing that was taken off from the Good to Great by Jim Collins. He talked about the people, the company, the product, the service. Here we are in networking, and you've got individuals, communities, and your individual networks. We just talked about where they are. They're in your phone. They're in this meeting. They're in this association. You've got other associations and other groups that you're a member of. Communities, those are your neighbors. These are, people you're friends with that you do gatherings when we can, and the people that are near and dear to your heart. So you put it all together and you get that fluency and you get comfortable with describing who you are, what you do, and tell me about yourself. Get that reciprocal going. How can I help you? And people will remember you instead of forgetting you. Okay? Okay, so we're going to pivot into LinkedIn. It's probably, it's the 800-pound gorilla. Here are some real interesting things to know. I've got more statistics coming up, but read quick. I'm not going to read everything. If you're not paying for your premium, $29 a month. I've been doing it for, 8-9 years, or I don't know. It used to be $19.99 is when I remember. And then before that, it was free. But then Microsoft took it over and they monetized everything. So you've got, depending on what you do for a living, you've got 4 different options. If you're in hiring and recruiting or HR, or if you're in sales, or you are self-employed in your own business, or you're just working on your career and managing ahead, you can do that $29 a month, and it'll help you get ranked higher. You'll get more visibility. You'll learn how to optimize your LinkedIn profile. That's a whole nother presentation, by the way, but I'm just trying to share the importance of why LinkedIn is the 800-pound gorilla. 76% of LinkedIn's revenue comes from recruiting firms, okay? And 100% of search firms use LinkedIn as their database to find people. And companies can find consultants. You can position yourself very, very successfully as a consultant on LinkedIn if you do so properly. And of course, finding a job, if you're not on LinkedIn, you will be left out. And I assure you that. And you got to have a really good headshot or you will be passed over. If you don't have a headshot, 84% of the time you will be passed over. No one will even stop and look at you if you don't have a headshot at all. But you don't want to have one down at the beach holding your surfboard, all right? You want to make sure that you get a good professional headshot. Just right here on up. Cost you maybe $100, $150, and then it's great for your website if you're consulting, but it'll always be there and make you proud. So here are the numbers all over the world. And I remember when I first joined LinkedIn was back in 02 or 03. I was one of the first 1.3 million people who joined. And now there's over 700 million worldwide. And that's gone up dramatically. I remember about 4 years ago, it was about 450 million people. So again, folks, very, very important to pay attention and make sure your presence and your profile has been optimized so that you're ranking high based on keywords, and make sure you fill out the all the questions that they ask for you to populate your profile and become an all-star, which is the highest ranking on LinkedIn. They award people who do all of this stuff and enter everything in there, from volunteer work all the way through your education, all the way through your employment. Okay? Keywords, I mentioned this. Socrates was the first to say it. If you don't know who you are, you're missing out. And if you don't have your keywords highlighted in LinkedIn, on your resume, on your marketing materials, your keywords are your deliverables. They're not your job titles or the names of companies you used to work for. Okay? There's a whole science to keywords that people are certainly becoming more aware of, but how to manipulate that and get it to work and leverage your keywords so that your ranking and your visibility and credibility are enhanced. Okay.
Can you give an example?
Well, I don't have a link to go to my LinkedIn profile, but you've got your headshot on the left, okay, left corner, and then right at the top, you've got a banner of your keywords. And those banner cannot be job titles and company names. Why would you give any public or PR to your former employer or your employer? You should have your deliverable, your category of expertise. So I say executive search recruiting, career transition coaching, talent assessments. I'm an executive in residence and teach students, and you've got up to 20 characters, and you can break that apart by those vertical lines. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll get a good idea as to what that looks like. And it's real easy to find Mark James, comma, CPC. And I would, if I had a LinkedIn, I could pull it up right now, but that wasn't part of the presentation. But I'm happy to connect with each and every one of you. Just send me a note saying, hey, I saw your presentation. That way I'll have a point of reference and we'll be able to connect. You always should send a note, a customized personal note. But keywords are everything. And if you know what your strengths are and you know what your deliverables are and your category of expertise, and LinkedIn gives you a lot of leverage to be personal. Whereas a resume is written in the third person, it's essentially a more formal document in a resume. But LinkedIn, it can be, you can have some quotes, you can have anecdotal type situations where you've made a difference. You can really be personal, and I think that's what sets people apart. Rather than just cut and paste your resume into LinkedIn, you can really shine in your about section where it's a summary of who you are. And you have up to 2,000 characters, and you should use them all. Again, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, we connect, you can see everything and how I set it up. And I'm very well optimized and have been for many, many years. And it's helped me a lot. I've made a lot of money just in a passive way where people contact me and they become a client, or I help them and they say good things about me, if anything, right? It's the goodwill. It's be memorable, be helpful. That's the key. So 5 job interview mindsets. We're almost done here. Doctor-patient mindset, the buyer versus seller. This is for interviewing. I love the doctor-patient. You're the doctor, the hiring manager is the patient. You are responsible for finding out what's wrong, what needs to be fixed, what is the requirement for the company that the consultant or the employee needs to do in the first 6 to 12 months. You know, where's the pain? And you need to ask skillful questions when you're in an interview, as well as solution type investigative questions when you're a consultant. A buyer versus seller in a job interview, you're not sure you want the job yet until you understand what it is, right? Don't go in and sell yourself. Nobody wants to be sold. Don't act desperate or anxious or needy. They say desperation is the world's worst cologne or perfume. Consultant mindset, that's solution providing. That's a great, this is all illustrated, by the way, in chapter 5 in my book. Another one is first day on the job. You go in there, what would you do if it was your first day? Rolling up your sleeves, you're ready, you're anxious, you want to get to work, you want to do the right job, you want to know what's the biggest task at hand, and you're excited. If you have these mindsets in an interview, you're going to do better. You're going to eliminate your competition. And then you won the lotto. Let's say you pick up a lotto ticket on the way home. The next day you got a big interview, and you read in the online in your phone that you won $500 million, and you're going, shit, I don't have to worry about anything. I can just go on this interview and just relax, right? Play it cool. Maybe I'll buy the company. Have a comfort level of who you are and relax. It's not the end of the world. The worst thing they can say is we've chosen somebody else. But you got to be comfortable in what you're doing and how you present. And there's practice involved. It's not just flip a switch and you're going to be comfortable, right? So here are some things for you to do. You're going to get a copy of this presentation, so you don't need to write anything down. But here are 3 ways to show hiring managers you're a fit for the role. Show them you get it. Include examples. Show them you want it. Let them know. Tell them, here are things that I believe align with your company. Show them you have the capacity to do it. I've done it before, and I'm absolutely positive that I can do it again. And do it well and make you proud because you chose me. Okay? These are simple things, but you've got to be able to put them out in your own way of communicating. Salary negotiation. I'm covering this. We're in the home stretch. You've got to choose wisely on who you work with, folks. It's not all about the money. It's in this order. People, challenge, balance, and worth. You don't want to be bored. You want your work-life balance, depending on where you're at in your life. If your kids are grown up and they're moved away and have families of their own and you're an empty nester, well, you got a lot of time in your hands to fly to Albany, New York tomorrow morning if they want you to, right? But if you have kids and you've got lots of dependent people on you, you've got to be around. So that changes as we mature and grow older. And then can they pay you what you're worth? What your rate is, your consulting rate, it is what it is. You got to meet ends meet. You never settle, never settle. Why would you? Price of gas ain't going down. Housing's not going down. Cost of living just keeps going up. Never settle. There's a whole lot of stuff that I write about and in chapter 8 in my book. And I'm not just trying to sell a book, but I want you to know that there's a lot of information in there. We just don't have time to cover it all. So here's the book. I really thank you for your time and your listening. I know everybody, we had a few questions, David. Thank you for bringing a few of those up. This book is free if you have a Kindle account and your Prime account. I just put it on Audible during COVID. It's been doing real well. People like listening to their phone and when they drive in their car. I guess it's doing really well that way, but it's my first love. It was like having a baby, and I highly recommend everybody write a book if you've got it in you. But I wanted to say my final thoughts are: ask first, listen well, talk last, and always say thank you, So thank you very much. Appreciate your attention today.
So thank you very much as well. And I'm, here we go. Thank you for the presentation and for answering the questions. Let me see if there's any other questions. I see some chat. We have a question from Jenna. What do you see as the biggest obstacle for individuals looking to change careers? What's the most important thing to focus on?
To change careers, it's going to be difficult to do through recruiters, because recruiters are only going to want to put you right back into what you were doing. Okay, that's not their job to find new pathways for their candidates that they recruit. In fact, that's the opposite. So you won't have to have recruiters as a resource for you. The best way to do this is through your own network, through your relationships, and making sure that it's feasible, it makes sense, and that sometimes if you do shift into another job, it may hurt your earning power. You might have to take a little bit of a cut in pay, because if you were paid well in what you were currently doing and you're going to do something else and kind of start into a new area, it might be a little bit of a sacrifice or penalty. Again, not knowing what you're trying to make that move in, but if it's indirectly related, I would say at a minimum, instead of completely 180-degree different, you might have a better chance of getting where you want to go. But it's going to be through relationships, people that know you and trust you, who have jobs within those companies that you would like to pivot into. Okay?
Okay, so the most important thing really is to focus on is your network. And
Exactly.
Okay.
100% of the time, keep it alive and nurtured.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm not seeing anything else in the chat box, so I'm assuming the answer is no.
Okay.
So anyway, thank you everybody for attending, and thank you, Mark, for a terrific presentation. And I think we've come to the end. Oh, I see. Tom, you want to say something?
No, I was just clapping, saying thank you.
Okay. I saw the hand and I was kind of going, okay.
So Dan, all you need to do is let me know where to email the copy of the presentation, and then you can send it out accordingly wherever.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough. We'll see about posting it on our website. And you know, so actually, if you want to send it to me, I'll forward it. Okay.
You got it.
Terrific.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody.
Good night, everybody, and thank you very much for attending.